Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's journey through Torah. This week is Parsha Shemini, the 8th. So, well, that's kind of a weird way to start something, isn't it? Well, not really. We're talking about the 8th day of consecration. As we're in the book of Vayikra, Leviticus. Vayikra means to draw near. So, Yahweh was calling out Vayikra, literally, and he called Vayikra, and he called out. But the idea is to draw near to Yahweh. As he's calling out to us, we are drawing near to him. And that's how this entire book opens up, is Yahweh showing us how to draw near to him. We opened in Vayikra with the explanation of the korbanot. The idea of korbanot is korav, which means something that is brought near. And then we go through the different ideas, the different types of offerings, the different things. Then last week, Tzav, the priesthood was to receive these offerings, and then they were to now that they received them, what do they do with them? Right, so they were given instructions on this, and then we also saw the beginning of the consecration, their ordination, if you will. They were being set apart, they were being anointed for their service. All of that was being established last week, and then we read that they were to remain within the confines of the courtyard for 7 days. Then on the 8th day, they were having more offerings, doing these things, kind of sealing it all up together, and then they would be instituted and put in service. So that's in Leviticus chapter 9. And then if you go a little further, you can get to the incident of Nadav and Avihu, which we're not going to really be able to address today this time around. We've done so in prior years, in past years. Remember, I'll put the link in the description so you can go back and look at that. And then as well, the ideas of kosher. What is to be considered food. It's not about what is clean and unclean food. That's kind of a misnomer. That which is clean is considered food. That which is unclean is not considered food. So, yeah, kind of going into all of that. And then we've done teachings on that as well, going into Acts chapter 10 and going into what was Paul really talking about when he said, just eat whatever's put in front of you. He wasn't talking about if it was kosher or if it was something that was clean or unclean. He was talking about something that had been offered to an idol, even if it was a clean meat. Going into all that, like I said, we've done in prior years. I'll try to put the links in there, and if you can't find the links, message us. We'll send them to you. Okay, so all of that is what we've got going here. Now, today we're going to talk about Leviticus 9. We're going to talk about, Aaron and his sons after the 7 days. So we have the 8th day. They're continuing their consecration. They're kind of sealing it all up together. And they're starting with the idea of Moshe gathering the priesthood in front of all Israel and saying, this is what is to be done. And there was a purpose to it. There was something that was really going to happen. And this is where we're going to emphasize. Okay, this is where we're going to do the most of the things today as we go through chapter 9. These things are to be done so that the glory of Yahweh will appear to you. Now, we can say it's not an idea of doing these things so that the glory of Yahweh will appear. It's a matter of the people are doing the things that Yahweh had said. They're being obedient. They're walking in faith, in obedience in what Yahweh had said. And Yahweh is saying when these things are done, then his presence will be there and be in the midst of the camp. So let's kind of jump into this, okay, without kind of delaying the process any further. Let's go to Leviticus 9. We'll start in verse 5, and then we'll come back. So verse 5. So they brought what Moses commanded before the tent of meeting, and the entire congregation drew near and stood before Adonai. So the idea here is they brought what Yahweh ordered, and they stood before Yahweh. Now the Torah states that they came to the Mishkan. But in doing so, they were standing before Yahweh. So the Torah says they all came before the tabernacle, and in standing before the tabernacle, they were standing before Yahweh. They didn't necessarily approach a tent. They approached the one whom they served. They're coming before him. Okay, it's not like they were coming before a dwelling place. The intent is they were coming before Yahweh. So verse 6 says, Moshe states, this is what Adonai has commanded that you should do so that the glory of Adonai may appear to you. Again, the idea here is not about a list of things to be done so that Yahweh will appear. It's a matter of these were the requirements that were being fulfilled. This was the finishing stages of their consecration and their ordination and the things that were being done so that the tabernacle would be put in service and so that Yahweh would be there in the midst of the camp and to dwell in the midst of them to do all that. Okay. So Leviticus 9:7. Moshe says to Aaron, I kind of separated out here so you can take a look at it. Draw near to the altar and bring your sin offering, your burnt offering, and then make atonement for yourself. And then he says, make atonement for the people. Then present the offering for the people and make atonement for them, as Adonai commanded. The interesting thing we see here is that Aaron was addressed first and foremost, and the first thing he was instructed was to draw near to the altar. So a couple of things I want to point out here. In Redeeming Relevance, the book of Leviticus, Rabbi Francis Nataf states the quality of a gift is understood as a reflection of the recipient's importance in the eyes of the giver, as well as the level of the relationship. The gift that we give ultimately is ourself, and it's our everything. Okay,
here's the deal, guys. We have a storm blowing through at the time I'm recording this, and we just lost power, and it's causing a little glitch in the video. So forgive me if everything doesn't quite line up right here, okay? So we're going to keep moving forward, though. We were talking about Hebrews 9 through 14, where it is because of what Yeshua did, he brought us into the presence of Yahweh. And because he did these things in the heavenlies, in a place of eternity, by the means of his own blood, his own life, him doing these things, it allows not just an outward expression, but it allows us even inwardly, purifies our conscience, purifies within us so that we can be upright and serve Yahweh in the midst of everything that he's called us to do. We can be in his presence and we can live before him. Okay. So moving on. So let's go to Leviticus 9. We'll kind of go through this, all right? Leviticus 9, verse 1. So now it happened on the 8th day that Moshe called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel, and he said to Aaron, take a calf from the herd for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering, both without blemish, and offer them before Adonai. You are to speak to the sons of Israel, Bnei Israel, saying, take a male goat for a sin offering, along with the calf and a lamb, both yearlings without blemish, for a burnt offering, plus a bull and a ram for fellowship offerings to sacrifice before Adonai, along with a grain offering mixed with oil, for today Adonai appears to you. So they brought what Moshe commanded before the tent of meeting, and the entire congregation drew near and stood before Adonai. And Moshe said, this is what Adonai commanded that you should do, so that the glory of Adonai may appear to you. Again, this was not a formula or an incantation or some kind of spell or whatever. If they do this, then Yahweh's going to appear to the people. No, this was a people moving and acting in obedience by faith to do what Yahweh had said, trusting that when they do what Yahweh had said, he's going to fulfill what he said he would do. And if we draw near to him in the way that he told us to draw near to him, he's going to meet us there, right? Which we do see a few places in other scripture. Deuteronomy 4:29 says, but from there, talking about after you've been in exile, but from there you will seek Adonai your God, and you will find him when you seek for him with all your heart and with all your soul. And in Jeremiah 29:12-14, we see the same thing being done there. So you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. And you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. And I will be found by you, says Adonai, and I will return you from exile and gather you from all the nations and from all the places where I have driven you, says Adonai, and I will bring you back to the place from which I removed you as captives into exile. So again, it's about calling out to him and drawing near to him because he's already called and told us to approach. So then he tells us how to do it. Okay, so moving on, Leviticus 9, verse 7. So Moshe says to Aaron, draw near to the altar, bring your sin offering, your burnt offering, make atonement for yourself and for the people, then present the offering for the people, make atonement for them as Adonai commanded. Verse 8, so Aaron drew near to the altar and slaughtered the calf for the sin offering for himself. So he first had to address the sin offering for himself before he could deal with the things for the rest of the people. Back more on that in just a second. Verse 9, the sons of Aaron presented the blood to him. Then he dipped his finger in the blood, dabbed it to the horns of the altar, and poured the blood at the base of the altar. Verse 10, but the fat, the kidneys, and the cover from the liver, the sin offering, he burned up in smoke on the altar as Adonai commanded Moshe. And the flesh and the hide he burned outside the camp. So if we go back to Leviticus 4, verses 2 and 3, it says, speak to Bnei Israel, sons of Israel, saying, if anyone sins unintentionally in any of Adonai's mitzvot that are not to be done and commits any one of them, or if the anointed Kohen sins as to bring guilt on the people, then let him first offer for his sin which he committed a young bull without blemish to Adonai for a sin offering. So what we see here is a picture before Aaron could make atonement or to bring any of the offerings for anyone else, he first had to deal with himself. He first had to make sure atonement was provided for himself. He had to make sure that he was right and in good standing and proper with the things that Yahweh had said and told him to do. So again, he had to deal with his sin offering before he could deal with the people, because when he sinned, then he brought guilt on the people. He brought guilt on all those that were under his authority to do this. Okay. So think about this. How much more do we see the Messiah was to be sinless? Because if he had sinned, he would have brought guilt on everything under his authority, which is everything. So here we have a picture. The high priest, before he could make atonement for someone else, first had to deal with himself. Okay. And again, it's kind of like the idea of even today, it's a good principle to stand by. You know, how are we going to instruct others in righteousness if we're not willing to walk righteously ourselves? Right. Okay. So for the hatat, for the sin offering, which we see in Leviticus 4:27 and 28, it says, if any one of the common people sins unintentionally in doing one of the things that the Lord's commandments ought not to be done, and realizes his guilt or the sin which he has committed is made known to him. Literally, how this reads is, if a single person sins. This prompted the comment that the person was led to sin by separating from the community, becoming an isolated individual, as it states in the Atonement. We are stronger together. The idea is, this is what Yahweh said to do, and I'm going to depart from that and do what I want to do. Okay. So for the Hatat offering, which is a sin offering, or also called a purification offering, it says for an unintended violation of the Torah, and in some cases, severe ritual impurity. And this required a purification offering. Hatat means to miss a goal or to miss a mark. In the verb form, it can mean to cleanse or to purify, which we see in Leviticus 14:49. It says in order to cleanse the house. The same word is used there in verb form. And Numbers 19:12, where it reads, he is to purify himself on the third day, on the seventh day. Again, hatat is a sin offering or purification offering, used as a verb, means to purify or cleanse. So that gives us, again, another picture of what was symbolized here. 2 Corinthians 5:18-21. It says, all these things are from God, who reconciled us to himself through Messiah and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, in the Messiah, God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses. See, we're talking about sin offering, not counting their trespasses against them. And he has entrusted the message of reconciliation to us. We are therefore ambassadors for Messiah, as though God were making his appeal through us. We beg you on behalf of Messiah, be reconciled to God. He made the one who knew no sin to become a sin offering on our behalf, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Hebrews 13:11-15 says, for the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the holies by the Kohen Gadol as an offering for sin are burned outside the camp. Therefore, to make the people holy through his own blood, Yeshua also suffered outside the gate. So let us go to him outside the camp, bearing his disgrace. For here we have no lasting city, but we seek the one that is to come. Through Yeshua, then, let us continually offer up to God a sacrifice of praise, the fruit of lips giving thanks to his name, which we also see more examples here. 1 John 3:5, you know that Yeshua appeared in order to take away sin, and in him was no sin. Romans 8:3-4 says, for what was impossible for the Torah, since it was weakened on account of the flesh. It doesn't say the Torah was weakened or the Torah was irrelevant or whatever. It says because of our flesh, we didn't fulfill it, is what it's really getting at here. It doesn't say there was fault with the Torah. There was fault with us, and we did not keep it. So this is a problem. So God, sending his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and as a sin offering, he condemned sin in the flesh. He didn't say he condemned the Torah or condemned sin in the Torah. No, he condemned sin in the flesh, so that the requirement of the Torah would be fulfilled in us, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Ruach, according to the Spirit. So again, the idea is reconciliation, being cleansed, and being able to have our sins forgiven and come in and to live before him. Okay, after the sin offering was the burnt offering, Leviticus 9:12. Aaron slaughtered the burnt offering, the olah offering, the offering that ascends or goes up. And then his sons presented the blood to him, and he splashed it around the altar. They handed the burnt offering to him piece by piece along with the head, and he burned them up as smoke on the altar. And he washed the innards and the legs, and he offered them up in smoke upon the burnt offering on the altar. So for the burnt offering, this was an offering that ascends completely to the Father. He calls this a pleasing aroma. It is given in complete dedication to Yahweh. Okay, we don't receive any portions of it back. It's just given as complete dedication to Yahweh. And we see in Ephesians 5:1-2, It says, become then imitators of Elohim as beloved children, and walk in love as Messiah has also loved us and gave himself for us a gift and an offering to Elohim for a sweet smelling fragrance. It is not us who live, but Yahweh who lives through us. See, that's the idea. Hebrews 13, 15, and 16, going a little further in that. So Yeshua, let us continually offer up to God a sacrifice of praise, the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name. Do not neglect doing good and sharing, for with such sacrifices God is well pleased, which is quoting from Hosea 14, 1 and 2. It says, return, O Israel, to Yahweh your God, for you have stumbled because of your iniquity. Take with you words and return to Yahweh. Say to him, take away all iniquity except what is good, and we will pay with bulls the vows of our lips, the fruit of our lips. The word there for fruit in Hebrew is pri, which is also could also be read as par. The root word here, par, is also the word for bull. So the word for the fruit of our lips and the bulls of our lips, in essence, is really the same words. The idea is that our sacrifices, our words, the things that come from us will be given to Yahweh as well, and may they be accepting and pleasing to Yahweh as well. Okay, Leviticus 9:15. So then he presented the people's gift. He took the goat of the sin offering, which was for the people. He slaughtered it, offered the sin like the first one. And he presented the burnt offering and offered it according to the decree. So Aaron made the offerings for himself. Then he made the appropriate offerings for the people. Then in verse 17, he presented the grain offering, filling his hand with some of it and burning it up in smoke on the altar alongside the burnt offering in the morning. So again, the grain offering, the mincha offering, something said about this. The mincha was a voluntary offering. It was an unleavened offering. It was salted. It was brought to the priest, and the priest takes a handful of it, anoints it with frankincense, and burns it on the altar. So this is, again, the idea of a grain offering, fine flour, right? And then and this is one of the offerings that there's no blood in it, okay? But yet it symbolizes bread as well, okay? So in John 6, 50 and 51, it says, this is the bread which comes down from heaven, so that anyone might eat of it and not die. I am the living bread which came out of heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he shall live forever. And indeed, the bread which I will give is my flesh, which I give for the life of the world. In John 12, 23 and 24, Yeshua says, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Amen, amen, I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls to the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. Again, the idea of comparing himself to a grain of wheat that is buried in the ground and it dies, but yet it springs forth in life, right, and produces much fruit. Okay, Leviticus 9:18 says he also slaughtered the bull and the ram as a sacrifice of fellowship offerings for the people. Then his sons brought him the blood, which he splashed around the altar, as well as the fat of the bull and the ram, the fat tail, the layer over the innards, among the kidneys, and the covering of the liver. And they put the fat on the breast, and he burned it on the altar. So the fellowship offering is also known as the peace offerings. There's different categories within it, but that fall under shalamim, the peace offerings. A fellowship offering is one of these things. And this, again, was a voluntary offering. When you brought it, you laid your hands on it, you killed it, and then after it was put on the altar, you received portions of it back, and it was to be eaten in the courtyard. This was a meal for you, literally from the table of Yahweh, to partake in a holy place and to express thanksgiving to Yahweh and to share that with others as well. And again, Romans 5, 1 and 2, it says, being justified by faith, we have peace with Yahweh through our Master Yeshua Messiah, through whom we've had access by faith into this grace in which we stand, and we glory in the hope of the glory of Elohim. In Colossians 1, 19 to 22, for God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile all things to himself, making peace through the blood of his cross, whether things on earth or things in heaven. Once you were alienated from God and hostile in your attitude by wicked deeds. But now he has reconciled you in Messiah's physical body through death in order to present you holy, spotless, and blameless in his guise. Again, in Messiah Yeshua, we have peace. And he was this peace offering. He made reconciliation for us and gave us peace. So in fellowship with him as well. Which some translations in Isaiah 53, where we read, and by his stripes we are healed. And some translations read, and in fellowship with him we are healed. Same concept, okay? Leviticus 9:21. So the breast and the right thigh, Aaron waved as a wave offering before Adonai, as Moshe had commanded. So now we're talking about a wave offering. So what does the wave offering got to do with things? Okay, well, things we're looking here. We also see where other things were waved before the Lord. Let's go back to Numbers chapter 8, verses 9 through 11. It says, you will bring the Levites before the tabernacle of the congregation, and you are to gather the whole assembly of the children of Israel together, and you are to bring the Levites before Yahweh, and the children of Israel will put their hands upon the Levites. And Aaron is to offer the Levites before Yahweh for an offering of the children of Israel, that they may execute the service of Yahweh. Interesting here where it says Aaron is to offer the Levites. We read in the Hebrew, it's vahanif. The word hanif, we'll take a look at that. Aharon et haleviim tenufa, that same word tenufa, it's the same word as the first that we said before, and hanif, tenufa lifnei Yahweh. So he is to offer, the word hanif, to offer et haleviim, the Aleph Tav leviim, the priesthood, that's to minister. Tenufa, he is to wave, lifnei, before Yahweh. So what's this word lifnei, not lifnei, but the tenufa that we're talking about? What is this? Okay, so the Torah uses two words to describe a physical movement of an object as it is being sanctified or dedicated to the sanctuary. So in relationship to these offerings, there's two words mainly being used here as far as the way its movement goes. It's terumah and tenufa. Terumah refers to a vertical movement, upward and downward. Terumah, it's something, it's being moved up. It expresses commitment to devote an object to Yahweh. You're lifting it up to Yahweh. And then tenufa refers to a horizontal movement, back and forth. This is directing the object towards the community. So again, it pictures of like loving the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might, and loving your neighbor as yourself. Again, in our relationship with Yahweh, as we're living sacrificially, putting our lives on the altar, like Romans 12 says, we're living to Yahweh, but we're also looking out for one another and living to bless one another as well. Okay, so we see all of these in there. So it's loving Yahweh and directing to the community as well. So if something is dedicated to Yahweh, terumah, it's also tenufa, being given to the people as well. Romans 11:16. It says, so if the first fruit is holy, so is the whole batch of dough, and if the root is holy, so are the branches. So that which was lifted up to Yahweh, if it is received, like the first fruit, okay? If it is received, then the rest of it is received as well. The first fruits that are given of the harvest, if that is received, then the rest of the harvest is received as well. They would even give the first of the challah to the priests, so that there would be a blessing on their households, as it says in Ezekiel, right? So if we lift it up and it be received, so who's lifted up and received to the Father as a first fruit? That's Yeshua. So if he is lifted up and received as a wave offering, as a received, the waving before Yahweh, being dedicated to Yahweh for the community of people, if this happens, if he is received, then we are received as well. And that's what we see in Romans 11:16. If the first fruit is holy, so is the whole batch of dough. If the root is holy, so are the branches. 1 Corinthians 15:20-23 says, but now the Messiah has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. For since death came through a man, the resurrection of the dead has also come through a man. For as in Adam all die, so also in Messiah will all be made alive. But each in its own order. Messiah the first fruits, then at his coming those who belong to the Messiah. Again, he was our wave offering. He was lifted up, and he was that first fruit that was accepted for Yahweh. And because he is accepted, we are accepted. Okay? And so all of this was done in preparation for what would happen as Yahweh appearing in the midst of the community. Now, Leviticus 9:22. So then Aaron lifted up his hands toward the people, and he blessed them. And he stepped down from presenting the sin offering, the burnt offering, and the fellowship offering. So it says that Aaron lifted up his hands toward the people, and he blessed them. What blessing do you think he would have said? Would it just be like, I bless you, and that's it? Guys, there's many things that are given here. One, I believe along this line, in Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 through 26, 27, Yahweh says, this is how you are to bless the children of Israel. And this is how I'm to place my name upon them and give them peace. So all these blessings are done. Yivarechecha Yahweh v'yishmerecha, Ya'er Yahweh panav elecha v'hunecha, Yasa Yahweh panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. All of this was the Yahweh said word for word, this is how you are to bless the children of Israel, so that I will put my name on them. So if Aaron is making these offerings and he blesses them, what blessing do you think he would have said? I believe it would have been that one. In verse 23, so then Moses and Aaron went into the tent of meeting, and when they came back out and blessed the people, and then the glory of Adonai appeared to the people. So Aaron went in, blessed the people, then Aaron and Moshe went into the tent, and then when they came out of the tent, they blessed the people again, and then the glory of Yahweh appeared to all the people. And then what happened? Amazing thing. Verse 24, fire came out from the presence of Adonai and devoured the burnt offering and the fat on the altar. When all the people saw it, they shouted and they fell on their faces. Amazing thing we see here. It says, so they blessed the people. They went into the presence of Yahweh. And then when they came back out, they blessed the people again. And it says fire came out from the presence of Adonai. I believe, this is the way it happened. Fire from heaven, fire from Yahweh came out from the midst of the tabernacle and went straight out to that altar, lit that altar. Yahweh lit that altar and consumed everything that was on it and everything that was there. The fire of Yahweh is now on that altar. And it is that fire that the priesthood was to never let it go out, to keep it burning. And even when they moved, they would smolder it, but they would never let it go out. Okay. And even as they were moving. So it's this fire from Yahweh that is to remain lit on the altar. And that's symbolic of our lives as well. It's the fire from Yahweh that we are to keep lit within our hearts. It is his fire, his presence, his ruach that we are to keep within us, that is lit. And we're to tend that flame and dedicate ourselves to Yahweh, understanding he is the one that causes us to be that Olah, completely dedicated to him. He is the one that is the living bread that came down from heaven. He is the one that is our peace offering and that gives us peace. He is the one that makes us whole in his presence. He is the one that has dealt with sin and guilt and transgression and all of our trespasses. And he is the one that purifies us. All of these things together is showing our dedication and submitting to Yahweh in letting him do all these things on our behalf, right? And we approach him because of what he has done, not because of what we have done, but because of what he has done. We can approach him. So this is our learning. When we go to approach Yahweh, we do it his way, and we learn his will for our lives as we come before him and have fellowship with him. And we'll see that as we continue in the book of Leviticus. And it's kind of like, okay, so then from chapter 9, you go to chapter 10, talk about Nadav and Avihu, where we really pose the idea. So is how we worship Yahweh, does it matter? Yes, it matters. Okay. And the people who are supposed to teach the people of Israel are held to a higher standard and a greater accountability to the holy things. We see that in the story of Nadav and Avihu. And then again, the issues of kosher. It's the idea of what we eat, what is clean, what is permissible to be eaten. Yahweh says to not touch the unclean things, to not consume the unclean things, to defile yourself. So again, this is a matter of being holy, right? Yahweh says, I've made you holy. Stay that way. That's what he's telling us. I've made you holy. This is how you are to live as a holy people. So all of this together is what we're seeing Yahweh instruct to us. There's a lot in here, guys. The more you dig in, the more you discover, the more you find. So I pray you stick with us on this journey. Continue to dig in with us. And I pray that this teaching has been an encouragement to you. I pray it's been challenging to you. And I pray it's a blessing to you as well. And if this has been a blessing to you, then consider making a donation. However, this is out there, right? We need your help to keep these things going on. So please consider making a donation to help us continue putting these out there. And if this has blessed you, then also consider sharing them in whatever avenue that you watch or listen to help us continue to put the word out there. If it's blessed you, it's going to bless somebody else too, right? So let's help put them out there, and we need your help to do that, okay? So may you be blessed, and may you be a blessing in everything that Yahweh has called you to do in this week and in the times ahead. So in Yeshua's name, may we walk in it. All right. So until next time, shalom.